practice these types of things. My name is Rachel, and I'm from Trent University, working in career space, and I'm here to support you through this event. And I'll let my counterparts introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Amanda. I'm the coordinator at ULink Center for Community-Based Research based in London.
And I'm Brendan. I'm the Aquatic and Terrestrial Biomonitoring Project coordinator, very long title, also at ULinks in Minden.
Outstanding. So this first slide here shares a little bit of more information about the other days where we did this presentation and where you could get some more information. I'll let those folks know if you are working on a Trent project and presenting as part of our celebration of research, we are going to have another training. You'll be receiving that information tomorrow to let you know about the virtual platform that we're going to be using so that you can feel really comfortable moving forward. We're here to support you. So we've got lots of ways that we can do that. The goals of today's session are to think about what to include in your poster, what makes a good poster, some useful tools and techniques in PowerPoint, which is the software that we're recommending you use, as well as a few details about the celebration of research events hosted by ULinks and by Trent.
So posters have long been used in academia to promote and explain academic work. We call it a bit of a blend between art and science. And we want essentially to strike a balance between visual appeal and information sharing. So we want to make sure the information is in user-friendly language and that it's accessible to the general public. So your poster should clearly communicate your research while keeping your audience in mind. And what is it? Can you go back to that slide, sorry? What is an effective poster? An effective poster presents your research in an organized and visually pleasing way. It's self-explanatory. It says here, in case you're not beside your poster, you actually are going to be because it's a virtual celebration of research. But nonetheless, you're still going to want your poster to be fairly heavy on the graphics and low on the text and easily understandable. You want it to be easy to read and you want it to be concise.
So what to include on your poster? There are a couple of things that are necessary. Poster title, your names of all your group members if you're working in a group, the year that you completed it, including the course code, who your faculty supervisor was, your host supervisor, who the ULinks or TCRC project coordinator are, including the logos. So the logos can be found on the Blackboard for this. And that's where you'll find the high quality, high resolution image. And so those are the ones you want to use because you wouldn't want something to be distorted. So definitely find them there. So in this first poster, I'm wondering if you can share with me what things you're observing that make it a strong poster, and if there's anything you see that doesn't make it a strong poster. What are some of the things that you can see, that you observe? You're free to put it in the chat, or you can turn your mic on and share.
The color on the right side pulls my eye a lot more than the left side.
Do you have a sense of why?
The colors are obviously going to pull me. The reds and blues are contrasting and pulling me over there, whereas the left side, just black and white, doesn't really drag the eye over.
Other folks, what are you noticing about the poster?
It's got a lot going on. It's kind of hard to pick one area to focus on.
Other folks?
I think the photo's a little out of place too. It doesn't really seem like it goes with the rest of the poster.
Okay, so wanting to have really relevant images that continue to communicate your story.
Okay. Overall, I think it's just very crowded. Like there's too much going on, too many like different categories. Yeah.
Okay. And what about this next one? What are you seeing here?
It looks like a good balance. Text is a bit small, though that also just might be neat. But yeah, it looks balanced. It's a little busy again, but it looks good.
I think it's really visually appealing regarding the images, but again, the text is small, and though like the main information is highlighted, you probably want to have like the introduction highlighted as well.
Mm. Okay, if that's all you thought about that one, what about this next one?
I think that there's like a lot of graphs, which can be really overwhelming, at least for me. And that's one negative that I found about the poster.
It's really hard to read all of those legends underneath each of those individual pie graphs. And that's something that I would encourage you to try and limit. So try and pick a couple of graphs that really hammer home the point that you're trying to make on your poster, and just kind of leave everything else out. It's nice to have, and it's nice to show people. But if you're writing a report for this, you can show that in your report. And so if someone's looking at your poster and they're interested about learning more, you can just show them your report. So space is at a premium.
All right, and what are we noticing about this poster?
I find like the writing and like the overall like text looks very messy, like because there are pictures behind some of the writing, you can't really see it very well.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
It's not super colorful, which is fine if that's what you're going for.
True.
But at the very least, the organization is pretty good. Like you've got the different areas and boxes limiting what you look at, if you will.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. One more. What do we see here?
I like all the colors in this one, but I do find that the text is kind of small in some parts and hard to read, and it's really like crowded in some areas.
So I think this is probably the best poster of all of them so far. It has a really good color scheme. So you can see the red and the gray and the blue. It's applied consistently. All the text boxes are well organized with good white space. Very good placement of the logos at the bottom and the acknowledgements. And they do use graphs. We definitely recommend you present some of your results graphically where possible, but we're not overwhelmed with graphs and charts the way we were in the last poster. I think if there was one thing I would change, the text is a bit small under background and there's a lot of it. Sometimes that's kind of unavoidable, but again, if you can use as few words as possible and more graphics, that always makes a clear, more organized looking poster. Okay. So I put this up as a slide just last year because I was on Twitter one day, on my Ulinks Twitter, and I noticed a whole bunch of excitement about this particular poster because it was quite different. And my understanding is these posters haven't actually changed that much in 40 years. Does someone see what's quite different about this poster than what you've seen so far?
It's got a nice big text section at the top to bring you in, and kind of very specific. So, you know, it gets you asking questions to yourself, and then you kind of look at the poster more.
Mm-hmm. What do you see that's specifically different about that title?
There's some bold in there. It's sort of aesthetically, the bold is kind of sectioned off, so it brings you down towards sort of like down across the poster.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I mean, yeah, instead of a sort of conventional title, right? It's again a quote to sort of get you already into the subject, and kind of so you have to work your way back out.
Yeah, anyone else? So the big thing about this title is that it's actually the outcome, right? Instead of the title. You can see the title is still there underneath, and all the data is still there, and the story is still there. But they actually put the results as the title, which is a little bit different. And it really, you know, it's a good way to draw in the viewer. So I'm just putting that there because feel free to do something like that. Do something a little bit different, as long as all the other content is still there. So the title, the story, the logos, the acknowledgements. Feel free to change it up a bit and be creative. Brendan?
Yeah, so these here are some free online poster templates that you're free to use. These are just a couple of examples. You can kind of find them anywhere. One thing that I would say is that if you're drawing inspiration from some of these posters, make sure that the first thing that you do is that you resize it to these dimensions, so 120 by 91.5 centimeters. We're very strict about that because those are the dimensions that are required by our printing company in order to print these posters. So if they don't meet those, they don't get printed, and your host will be relatively unhappy. So yeah, you can use as much inspiration as you like, but just make sure that it fits within those bounds and it fits them exactly. So what your poster should do is it should tell the story of your project. So you should have your research question along with the purpose of your project. You should talk about the methodology, so how you went about researching your project. So for example, a few of you I know are part of my Benthic program. You'll be looking at what methodology you used, so talking about the Ontario Benthos Biomonitoring Network, all of that kind of stuff, what you did, if you did any field work, et cetera, et cetera. What your findings or preliminary outcomes were. So I know some of these, you'll be presenting them probably before your finalized report is completed, but even if you have like some preliminary outcomes, now would be a good time to kind of focus on them. And then finish off with some recommendations or next steps. So what would be the next logical step after your research for your host organization to take? So this kind of flow is telling a story that anyone who walks up to your poster will be able to kind of lead themselves through. In this case, you'll be with your poster. You won't be walking away from it because it'll be digital. You'll be stuck to it. But that's kind of the idea that you're going for. Next slide, please.
Do you want to do the elevator pitch?
Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah. So does anybody want to try an elevator pitch? Kind of give a brief 30-second synopsis of the story of your project. Anyone brave enough?
I guess so. For mine, I'll be investigating. Sorry with that. Just turn off the mute button. I'll be looking at two different lakes, one connected to the other. Kinesis Lake in Halliburton region. We'll be investigating the water quality over time. So for that, we'll have to investigate whether or not there's been any mimes or any other land developments that might have affected the water over time. As well, we need good baseline levels to understand what changes have been made and what are the causes.
Pretty good. Anybody else? Yeah, William.
So yeah, so what we're researching is it's social procurement. So and it's for Quarter Lakes Halliburton. So what that is basically when a municipal government spends money, they're looking historically at the cheapest cost to basically whatever they're spending on. It can be anything from printer paper to big projects like building roads. What social procurement is readjusting that. So not only are you looking at things in terms of price, you're also looking at it in terms of what it can do for things like the local economy or people who have traditionally had barriers to employment, that sort of thing. So basically, big picture is we're looking at how to include social criteria into basic purchasing for Quarter Lakes and Halliburton.
Awesome. Very succinct. Good job.
Good job, William.
Anybody else want to give it a go before we move on? If you want more time to think about it, we can come back to this at the end. If anybody else wants to give it a shot near the end when you have a little bit more time to think about it. But one more call for one more elevator pitch.
I guess I'll go then. Why not? I'm looking at the history of the Kinesis Lake region, specifically what attracted the initial settlers to the region and the methods of transportation they used when they got to the region.
Awesome.
Very interesting sounding. Cool. So how do you get started with thinking about this poster? It's a big undertaking. So what we are recommending is to start with paper and pencil. Plan your content, the main points, sort of get some ideas about what you want the layout to be. I would even recommend using sticky notes because they come on and off the piece of paper easily, so you can move them about as you make your decisions about where your content will be and where you want to put your graphics. My second recommendation, and this is really important, I would recommend putting your text in Word first and save it so that you don't lose any of your information that you're putting there. It also has a slightly higher spelling and grammar check. So you want to have it in 2 copies, and then you can just copy and paste it over to whatever program you're using for the creation of the poster. We recommend that you look at past posters as well to get some ideas and think about layouts. And then also remembering that we're using those logos in the high resolution so that they don't end up being distorted. Okay, so for your text, again, that separate Word file is recommended. Try to be concise when you're writing. Use bullet points where it's possible, present it graphically. And then here's some specific information about the size and type of font here. So you might want to take note of this. You're looking at the 4th one. You're thinking about contrast. So that yellow writing is nearly impossible to read. But when you layer it and put a color in behind it, then the contrast allows you to see it better. It makes it easier to read. So really be considering which colors you're using, how they make sense together, and if they work well together.
So we just put a little note in here about serif typeface versus sans serif. So sans serif letter form is one that doesn't have those extended features called serifs on them. And sans serif is actually used to convey simplicity and modernism. So we actually recommend that you use sans serif typeface, so the sentence on the bottom there, simply because it's just much easier to read. Another important point is ensuring that your photos and images are 300 DPI if possible. So DPI stands for dots per inch, and it's really important for the printers when they get your poster draft for the images to be at least 300 DPI, because otherwise the resolution will be quite blurry. We know that once in a while, when you ask your host for their original high-res logo, they don't have it. They only have a low-res one, and if that's all you can get, then that's all you can get, and that's fine. As for the ULinks, TCRC, and Trent University logos, you can get those all on the CBR portal under the poster workshop title. So just click on that, and you can also find some poster templates there that you can use. If you're just grabbing images off the internet and saving them on your desktop and using them, they're going to be around 72 DPI. So again, it's always best to try to get 300 DPI wherever possible. There's actually a way of finding DPI in Windows, and that's actually in the notes for these slides. So I would recommend, after the session is done, when you're doing your poster, you actually download the full poster deck and look at the notes, because there's some tools in there that are going to be important for you to use. PowerPoint also automatically compresses images to a lower PPI resolution. So if you go under File and Options, you can go to Image Size and Quality section, and you can press Do Not Compress, so that your images are not compressed in PowerPoint. But that is, and the notes for that is also on this slide. So if you forget, just download the full slide deck with the notes. And just a little note on logos and photos. Most of you guys already know this, but when you take an image and you resize it by grabbing the top or the sides, it's going to look distorted like it is on the right. So if you do need to resize, you grab from the corner and slide it up, and then it'll be proportional. It just looks quite unprofessional to have stretched images or photos on your poster. And it's quite an easy fix to not do that. So just pull it from the corners, or don't resize it at all if it doesn't need to be resized. Please use PowerPoint, or let us know if you want to use Adobe. So we suggest using PowerPoint because everyone has access to it and it's free and it's easy. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't encourage you, if you have literacy in Adobe Illustrator, for example, or Adobe InDesign, if you'd like to do your poster in either of those mediums, you're more than welcome to. Just make sure that you're meeting the size and the border requirements. If you take one thing away from this workshop, it's that you must resize your PowerPoint page before you start the work. If you don't resize it to this custom size, and it's the only size the printers will take, then everything will become distorted, your images and your text, and you'll probably have to start over. So the first thing you're going to do when you open your blank slide is you're going to resize it 120 centimeters wide by 91.5 centimeters tall. That's 47 inches times 36 inches. You need to have a 3 centimeter or 1.2 inch white border on your poster. You don't want any PowerPoint backgrounds allowed going to the edge, or images that are going to the edge. The printer will reject those, and then there will be a delay and goes on from there. So another really important thing, printers will only accept posters that have a 3 centimeter white border on your poster. So ULinks and TCRC staff will check at one point that you have that, but if you get it to us right the first draft, then it's a lot less back and forth. And again, we talked about having your images 300 DPI or higher. Does anyone have questions about that? No? Okay. So Rachel, are you able to let me share my screen? Oh, it looks like I can. Great. I'm going to just show you a few tools in PowerPoint here. Everyone see that template?
Yep.
Okay. So this is an old TCRC poster that we quite liked for its simplicity, for its color schemes, and just for the image that really attracts the eye there. So I was just going to show you quickly how to actually resize your poster. So if you go into design, slide size, you're going to go to custom slide size. And here my computer is set to inches, my Windows settings, so I can't change those easily. So I'm going to leave it at inches. So it's going to be 47 by 36 inches, which is the equivalent. And I'm just going to press OK. So that's good. That was a really important first step. I resized my poster. The other really important thing to know about is grids and guidelines. So if you see these little dotted lines going down the screen, those are guidelines, and they actually help you, center your pictures, make sure all your text boxes are around the same size, making sure you've got those 3 centimeters or 1.2 inch borders. I can usually tell if a student has used grid lines or not, because I can just see how they blocked their poster. So if you go to view, you can put on your ruler, really important, and your guides, right? And then you can just start adding guides. This only takes maybe 5 minutes. Right click, grids and guides, and then you can add right here. It does require you to do a little bit of math, but I can assure you it's not hard to do borders with grid lines. So all you're going to do is you're going to look at the very edge and see what that is. So 23.6 inches. I wasn't dealing centimeters, I'm dealing with inches. And you're going to take away 1.2 inches, which converts from 3 centimeters. To make it about 2250, 2240. And then you're just going to do that on each side. So you're going to go to the very edge and minus that 1.2 inches or that 3 centimeters. Again, only takes a couple minutes, but it'll make sure that you've got uniform borders. A couple of other tools some of you guys might already know. Okay. Align is a really good tool. So if you shift click and you go to home, arrange, align to middle, you can make sure your pictures are perfectly aligned. Okay, if you want to group them together, you just select both, select group, and then you can move them together. Okay. You can ungroup them. And then most of you probably also know, since most of you are much younger than me, another very basic tool is just sending photos backwards or forwards. So send to back, and then you can send it to front just to layer your photos. And the last little thing I wanted to show you guys is if you look at all these text boxes, you can tell that they're all quite uniform in terms of their margins and their white space, and it looks really nice and clean. So the way the student did that was they went into text box margin. So you go into format shape, you go into text options, text box, and then you can see these margins here, left, right, top, bottom. You can align them to be all the same for all the text boxes. So another pretty easy tool to make sure you've got enough white space. And there's lots of other tools you know, more sophisticated ones as well that you guys can use. I didn't want to go over them all today, or it would be quite dry. And I know that a lot of you guys already have a good vocabulary with this stuff, but you know, if you're not that familiar with PowerPoint, I would suggest taking, you know, an hour or something before you start your poster to just play around with the different tools and just be creative and have fun and figure out what you want your poster to look like. As well, this template is actually going to be available on the CBR portal. It is available on the CBR portal under poster workshops, and there's one or two others. You're totally welcome to use this template, especially if you know you don't have time to be really creative and you're not that familiar with PowerPoint. You just want to have a template. You're welcome to use it. I would just suggest changing up the color schemes, maybe changing up the font, obviously the photos, because there will probably be several students using the same template, and we want to mix it up a little bit with the posters to make them interesting, especially since this is going to be a virtual celebration of research. So does anyone have any questions about that? No? Awesome. All right, I'm going to stop screen sharing here. And I can't actually find the stop button.
It should be at the top center portion of the screen.
Oops, I see. Okay, sorry. It was on my wrong monitor. Sorry about that. Okay.
Okay. Let's get that side. And those ones. So, in preparing your poster for printing, you're going to email us the poster in both the PowerPoint or Publisher file and a PDF. So we need both of those by Wednesday, March 10th. That's the final deadline. Now, we are available before to give you feedback, to look at drafts and make sure that you're on the right track and on the right page. So please contact us, reach out. We are happy to support you. It would be unfortunate if we found ourselves in a situation where we were at the 10th and we had to send it back to you because there were some margin errors or spacing type of things. So we want to make sure that we're in a good space for this event. Preparing for the day, making a good impression. So as I said before, if you are presenting with TCRC, we will be hosting another event so to get you comfortable and familiar with the software that we're using. If you're presenting with ULinks, you will be using Zoom. So you are probably relatively familiar with a Zoom platform. But there's a couple of other things that you want to be thinking about for the day.
So you want to make sure that you prepare for any technical issues that you might run into. Make sure that you have access to stable internet. I would highly recommend that if you can, use an Ethernet cable and not rely on Wi-Fi, because Wi-Fi can cut out because someone turned on a microwave or your neighbor just plugged in their new router that has even more powerful Wi-Fi than your router, and there's a bunch of confounding things. Plugged, wired in is always better than Wi-Fi 9 times out of 10. Also make sure that your headphones are charged if you're one of the few people who are starting to switch over to the whole Bluetooth headphone thing. And make sure that your sound is working, your microphone is working before the celebration of research. So this way, if you need to do some behind the scenes technical stuff, you're not doing that while you're trying to present your poster to someone who's in your booth. As a backup, record yourself when you're practicing your elevator pitch. This is for 2 reasons. One, it's a good way to practice and see yourself and kind of figure out what would make it more engaging for someone who is watching you give your elevator pitch. And two, if you know that you're going to have some internet issues or other technical issues, like your computer needs to go in a couple days before the celebration of research, you could potentially send that to us and we could use that as your elevator pitch for anyone who comes in. So it's not exactly the same as like a one-on-one presentation, but close enough. So you're still getting your poster represented. It's also good, kind of going back to that whole recording thing, it's also good to look at how engaging you are. It's really, really, really hard with Zoom right now, because even like right now, we're all just boxes, moving boxes on a screen, which is a little bit dehumanizing. So people often kind of get a little bit flat. They don't use hand gestures. You're talking to a screen. You don't feel like you're talking to another human being. Recording yourself can help you get around that by you having to look at yourself do what you just did. And you can think, okay, well, I could probably use more hand gestures. I personally, I'm in awe a lot, which I'm trying to get better at. And I'm slowly getting better at that. But just record yourself, look at how you're doing, and think about your tone, your the speed of your speech, all of that. It all makes it more and more engaging. So.
With TCR, you'll also be camera on. So thinking about your background and what works for you. So set yourself up so you're feeling confident to share that. Turn your desk so that it's against a wall if you're not wanting people to see into your home.
Or if you can't do that, and actually, does Brazen do virtual backgrounds?
I do not think it does virtual backgrounds.
Okay. If you're with Ulinks and you're using Zoom and you've got a messy background and you can't get around it, just use a virtual background. They usually work pretty well. So just kind of hides things. I sometimes do that with my messy couch behind me.
Okay, so virtual it is. TCRC is going to be hosting theirs on Friday, March 26th, and Ulinks is on Saturday, March 27th. We would strongly recommend you planning on showing up for the others events. It is always nice to have a friendly face and someone who understands what you've been through as well. And you get to hear about each other's research, which is just so fabulous. So I would strongly recommend planning to attend the other event.
And yes, TCRC Celebration of Research is going to be in Brazen. Ulinks is going to be using old-fashioned Zoom. If you haven't yet marked those dates on your calendar, please do so right away, because those events are actually mandatory. And you're going to be having your poster at the ready and your 30-second elevator pitch for other students to be asking you questions. For the community members to be asking questions, faculty, so have that ready. Especially with virtual events, we sometimes notice that engagement isn't at the same level as it would be in an in-person event. So we really encourage you guys to ask questions of each other to keep up the excitement and to keep up the communication wherever you can. Keep the dialogue going. For both events, there's going to be main student speakers, which we're trying to arrange, and those, it's going to be between 3 and 5 presenters, and they're going to be asked to do a little bit of a extended elevator pitch, so probably a short PowerPoint, just speaking between 5 and 7 minutes. So for those students, they'll be doing just a little bit of extra preparation, but for most of you, I would just ask that you keep the virtual tips in mind that Brennan and Rachel have mentioned, that you work hard on your posters, and that you really fully understand your project and try to anticipate some of the questions and the kind of devil's advocates that you might be coming across at the virtual celebration of research. Does anyone have any questions about that?
Actually, sorry, Amanda, just before we move on, I would also like to point out that we will also be having kind of a couple of dry runs, as we're calling them, for students, so that they can get familiar with more so the format that we're using for Zoom, just because it is a little bit different than probably you're used to with your online lectures and stuff. We'll be sending out some more information to all the Ulinks students about that shortly, probably within the next couple of days or so, with dates and times. So.
We want you to feel confident and prepared to share all this great research that you've got going on. Are there any questions? Well, I mean, if you're like me, the minute this event is over, the question pops into your head. So please email us, reach out to your supervisors. We're happy to support you. And one last slide.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak quickly to the poster design checklist. So this checklist, again, you can see in the CBR portal under the poster workshop section. And what this is it basically just summarizes all the components for your poster that we covered today in one document, because I know it's a lot of information. So as well as having those poster slides and the notes in them, you've also got this checklist. So as you're creating your poster, you can just check off to make sure that you've covered all the components. So that's a separate document in your CBR portal, and I would really recommend you use it before you submit your drafts to TCRC and ULinks. And I should also say TCRC and ULinks, Ryan and I and Brendan and Rachel are all totally open to any one-on-one consultations about your poster at any time. So if you want to give us a call or send us an email or send us a very, very early first draft just to make sure that you're on track, we are absolutely open to that. It actually helps us because then we're not dealing with a huge influx of posters, you know, a couple of days before the final due date. So please get started early and send drafts to us. Any other questions?
I just did actually think of a question. I'm just wondering, I just want to confirm that you did say these slides that were presented today are in the portal?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect.
They are. And if you download it and then open it, you'll see all the notes as well.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you.
Okay. The templates in there are also might be helpful to you. So like the TCRC poster that I just went through, and I think one or two other examples are in there. And if you want to see more examples of posters, you can go to the ULinks or the TCRC sites and see many dozens of examples of past projects if you want to get inspired.
Okay.
I think we've got about 4 or 5 years worth of posters on our
I think we're up to 5 now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you guys for coming today. We appreciate you taking your time out of your day to attend this workshop, and good luck. And don't be afraid to contact us with